Okay, good morning.
Good morning. How you doing this morning?
I'm good, thank you.
Loving this weather. Loving this weather. God knows I am. No snow. Oh, Lord have mercy. Yeah.
I'm Pat Michael. I'm a volunteer with the Middletown Historical Society, and I'm here with Keith Schneider, who's our videographer. And we're here at the Appoquinimink Community Library in Middletown, Delaware. And what the Historical Society is trying to do is to document in video, based on your memories and experiences, the history of Middletown from the 1900s to today. So we're glad that you're here. Relax, and I'll have some questions for you, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
What is your name, and do you have a nickname?
I don't have a nickname. Never did have it. What they call me, used to call me Little Edna because my grandmother's name was Edna. But I don't have. I really don't have a legitimate nickname. But my real name is Edna, Edna Cale, with a C, C-A-L-E. They think I'm a vegetable, but I'm a C. And so that's my name. I've been in Middletown all my life. Well, not Middletown so much as a little town called Mount Pleasant, but it's also Middletown.
And when and where were you born?
Mount Pleasant, Delaware, 1939. I've been here for a minute.
How did your family come to live here?
My grandfather was a conductor on the railroad years ago when the trains would come to Mount Pleasant and people would get on and off. He would flag or put them on or put the stuff on. So I got free rides because I could ride on a train to Wilmington. I could ride on a train wherever the train was going. I could ride it, and so that's how I came here. My mother was born here also in a little town called Mount Pleasant. Yeah.
Well, were there other family members here, or just your immediate family?
There was other families members here. There was about 5 of us, five different families that was around in the area. We all grew up together. We was in this little town called Mount Pleasant, which is nothing but it was a granary, and so that's where the train stopped, and that's where people did business and stuff like that. But we did all of our shopping and everything came to Middletown. We had to come to Middletown for everything. We had a little corner store, but didn't have no grocery stores and stuff like that. So we came to Middletown and shopped at Earl Sharver's, Sadolph's, and Berkman's and places like that to get whatever we wanted.
What was the house you grew up in like? So how many rooms did it have? Did it have running water? Did it have electricity?
I'm in the country. Okay, we had 4 bedrooms. And first off, I need to go back and say the house that I grew up in is the same house that my mother went to school in. And so somehow or another, my grandfather got the house brought down there to where it is now. And that's where we lived. And we didn't have no running water. We ran that pump. You know, we pumped our water. We had nice fresh spring water. And so didn't have no, we had an outside john. I call it outside toilet. You know, when we went there, we had a chamber pot in the bedroom for nighttime, and that was my job was to clean the chamber pot, you know, and stuff like that. But it was me, my grandfather, and my grandmother that lived in the house. My mother lived with her husband at another place.
What is your earliest childhood memory?
School right in behind me, going to school there, living where I live, and my grandfather I call him the boss of everybody, and in back of my house where I live was 117C, I think it is, school that I went to for elementary school, and his job was to make sure that in the wintertime that the teacher got into there. So I had all those pleasures of having see him shoveling the snow and getting her ready to get into the school and making sure that there was far there. So then the kids from the other surrounding areas came to our house and would wait to get into the school. So those are the kind of things that I remember.
So you said the name of it was 117C. Can you explain that?
DuPont built a whole lot of schools for colored people, and so they named them as 119C, 117C, one whatever C, but C stand for colored. And the road that the school went on was called Colored School Lane. They changed it after the developments started coming up there because white folk didn't want to be on Colored School Lane. So I don't even know what they call it now, but they call it something else now.
Is the school still there, do you know?
The school's still there, but somebody bought it and converted it to a house. And so in back of it now is a house, and they have everything is the same shape and everything. Nothing has changed for the school.
What kind of games did you play growing up?
Plaiting the grass. We would plait grass. We would get on the grass. There's a certain kind of grass that you could plait. And so we would plait grass, make mud pies and stuff like that. In back of the school in the wintertime, there was a pond. And then we would skate on this pond. That was our skating area. We didn't have no skates. We skated with our shoes and stuff like that. So plaiting grass, making mud pies, and just this would be our house. We would take our barrettes and stuff, and any kind of things that we could make out of braids and stuff like that. We didn't have stuff. We had to make our own. Make everything that we wanted. You know, if we wanted to, the school had little games over there for the kids when we were younger. You know, you would climb the monkey bars and stuff like that, and seesaw and stuff like that. We had that over there, but we weren't allowed to use it because it belonged to the school. But we would sneak over there and do things like that. Yeah.
What was your favorite thing to do for fun? Like
Plait grass and make mud pies.
and go ice skating.
Yeah, and go ice skating in the wintertime, yeah.
Did you go to the beach or the
Oh,
movies?
no. Beaches, we weren't allowed to. I was black. I was African American. And so those things were not open to us. You know, some friends of mine years later when we got in high school, they got a job down in Rehoboth, but they only got the job there, but they couldn't, we couldn't go there and swim and stuff like that. We had a beach called Salisbury, Spira's Beach down in Maryland that we would, our parents would get a bus and would take us there in the summertime, but that was the only time we had a beach.
Has that changed?
That development, it was a black-owned community, and people didn't keep up with the taxes and stuff like that. So now it's a development. So it has really changed. Yes.
What was school like for you as a child? What were your best and worst subjects?
Worst subject was all of them. Somebody said, if you could go back, what years would you go back to? I said any year that didn't have mathematics or English. I said because I hated. We had to hanging participles and all that kind of stuff with English, nothing like they do now. I said and me and math just didn't get along. I said so. I did well. I passed, because the school that I went to was a one-room school, so it was first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. It was first through sixth grade. So I went from this bench over here, first grade, to this bench over here, second grade, to, like that, and finally got over to the window for the sixth grade, and that's where it stopped. And then after that, I would catch a bus. And it would bring me to Middletown.
To which school?
I went bring me to Middletown to church because we didn't have no schools then. They had 120, I think it's 120C was the colored school from Middletown, and we would go there. But when we came down here, they didn't have classrooms for us, so I would go to Dale's Church. Went to Dale's Church for the 7th grade. We went in the basement and had classes there, and the teachers would come there and teach us for the early periods, and then from the early periods, then we would go to 117C, the colored school, and we would do home economics and other classes like that in the afternoon. But and the best part about that part of school was being able to cook. I would be able to cook and eat my own food because my parents, back in the day, we packed our lunch. You packed it in a brown paper bag, wrapped it in newspaper. I laugh about things like that now, but that was the way I lived, you know. And so when I got into 7th grade, I did home economics, and so whatever we cooked, we could eat, and I really enjoyed that. Or sometimes I would have enough money to buy lunch. The ladies in the town would cook the lunches at their home and bring it to the school. So that was the best part about it.
Did you go to high school?
I went to high school that was the high school part, 7th, 8th, and 9th, and then I was there until they opened Losell Reading itself. And don't ask me what year because I don't remember the year that Reading opened. But I went from the 8th grade at the colored school to Losell Reading when it first opened, and that's where I hated it because I had to do typing and stuff like that, and I did not like none of that stuff. I did not like school. I was the only child. My parents didn't allow me to do this. They didn't allow me to do hardly nothing. My grandparents really. And so if I got a chance to go visit with my mother and my other siblings, then I would have a little fun. They would do things that I wasn't able to do at my house because I wasn't allowed to get dirty. Wasn't allowed to do a whole lot of stuff. So school was basically, I guess, my little outlet as to where I could go, you know. But I had a few friends there then, because I would get on a bus and I would make the friends, people who were coming from Glasgow and Iron Hill and Delaware City and Port Penn, places like that, on the buses. And so those are the kind of things that we did.
Do you remember any fads from your youth, like popular hairstyles or clothes? Was there anything that was the thing then?
I can't. I can remember, but I can't remember the names of them. But we had cheap dresses that had can slips and stuff like that. So we had all that, and so it was like if we went to a dance, we'd try to dress up a little bit. We'd go to Joseph Berkman and buy those $1.99 shoes that would hurt your feet. You put them on. By the time you got to the dance, you was taking them off, or you was walking on the back. Walking on the back of them, but we had our can slips and stuff like that. So the people that had the most money, you could tell who they were. Yep, they had the special hairstyles and stuff like that. My stuff came from my grandma. She was. That's the way she was. That's the way she raised me. Yeah.
Did you have any favorite songs or music while you were growing up?
Yeah, we had. There's a place we used to go to called the Shop, and it had a piccolo in there. So look, I'm trying to remember some of those songs now. I had a seizure, and so I had some memory loss. And
that's okay. If you don't remember, it's okay.
Okay, yeah, but we had some music. So I would sneak off from school and go up there when the piccolo man was coming in to change the music. and we would go in there and find out what was the new music was, and whoever had money would put a quarter in the machine, play the music, and then run back down to the school. The other thing that we did, we snuck around and tried to smoke, buying cigarettes by the, you didn't buy cigarettes by the pack, you bought them singles. And so we would sit up to the shop. Well, we didn't sit in the shop because the lady didn't allow us to do it. But we would sit up to the shop and smoke our cigarettes and listen to the newest music and stuff like that. And so, yeah, we had several music. James Brown, Fats Domino, all those kind of people like that.
All the big ones.
Yeah.
Did you have any pets? And if so, what kind and what were their names?
Didn't have no pets. I wasn't allowed to have pets. I was allowed to work in them gardens, pick them tomatoes and bud them, what we call it budding beans. You know, beans that had buds on, bugs on them. We had to get that off early in the morning. They would get me up early in the morning. My grandmother, grandfather, and I, we'd be out in that garden. Yeah, but I worked. I really worked, yeah.
What was your religion growing up, and which church did you attend?
There's a little church in Armstrong called Ringo Chapel, and that's where I went to church. My grandfather also was boss at that church. I can't say boss. My grandfather, I call him trustee of everything. He was, I walked from Mount Pleasant, which is about 4 miles, to Armstrong, to church every Sunday morning, whether it's winter or summer or whatever. It was at that time it wasn't fun. So now I think about it, it was fun to go. And then we would go home, steal peaches out of Everett Meredith's lot, and then he would chunk us because he didn't want us in his you know. It was racism, really strong racism back in the day, and he would call us all kind of names. But we would still get the peaches and the apples off of that tree or on the ground, and run up the road. Yep, because it was 5 families up in there, and we all went to church at the same place, and we all did the same things, and so that's what we did. That was our fun. Yep, and then we were.
Were you ever mentioned in the newspaper or other publications?
Years later, I was, a friend of mine was trying to tell me about going back to college, going to school and getting my degree. And so I was mentioned in Delaware, the newspaper came out, I think of the name, not transcript.
News Journal?
Yeah, News Journal. I was mentioned in the News Journal because I went back to school, they called it re-entry. And so I got a scholarship to go back to school, and went there for Del State for. I didn't like it because I went there and it was young kids that was there, and so I was now pretty close to being I was an adult, and so they did not believe nothing that had ever happened, you know, like when they was talking about the history of racism and stuff like that. Oh no, people didn't do that. People didn't do that because they had no ideas. As it is now, still don't have an idea of what really happened. Yeah, but I played basketball, and when I played basketball, girls team you only played half court. So I was a guard, and so I stayed down this end. And my other people, the forwards, I was on the other end. So that's how we played basketball. But me and my girlfriend, Claire, who also lived at Mount Pleasant, we was the biggest ones on the team. And they had suits for everybody except for us. They had to go buy a special kind of suit for us because we were so big and tall. Big and tall. I used to. They got pictures of us in a yearbook. I tell everybody, I said, I felt so awkward, you know. Things was just awkward for me back growing up, you know. But I was determined to make it, and did make it a little ways, yeah.
What world events had the most impact on you while you were growing up? And did any of them personally affect your family?
I try not to think about those kind of things because, like I said, racism was, you know, first off, we had stamps, green stamps and whatever other kind of stamps you could get, and you could only buy so much sugar, you could only buy so much flour, so much of this and so much of that. So and my grandmother did not allow me to buy chocolate ice cream because it was considered racist, you know. So I had to always buy vanilla, and I loved chocolate, but she didn't allow me to do it. So those kind of things happen. So when I would get on the train to go somewhere, she and I had to sit at certain spots on the train. Like she had family down in Maryland, so we would go down there for a weekend, and but getting on the train was a hassle, you know. She told me, she said, Edna, said, I'm glad you were born now than when I was born. So because you would be dead because you don't keep your mouth closed. You ask too many questions. You're too nosy, you know, and you can't do that. Because she worked for a lady who had cancer real bad. The lady wanted shortbread, but she would not allow my grandmother to make her shortbread. My grandmother had to take the flour and everything upstairs to her so that she could mix it up, because my grandmother was about your complexion, almost your complexion. But she said that black was coming off of her into the flour. So those are the kind of things that I was constantly dealing with as a child coming up. And those are the kind of things that impacted my family. They still tell me that, Edna, you still got a mouth that's going to cause you some trouble, you know, but if you ask me, I'm going to tell you, you know, and those are the kind of things that hurt. And then I had a lady that lived on a farm called Dixie Robb, and she, I used to babysit her. I don't know why I was babysitting her, because her kids were the same age I was that I was babysitting, but she had some younger kids, and I would watch her kids, and she was a really influential person in my life. She kept my parents involved in the politics. That's how Redding got the name, because she kept them abreast as to what was going on in Dover. She and another cousin of mine had the cars that they had, and they would go down there and argue about different points that they needed. We had a creamery in Mount Pleasant, and they was trying to get rid of it, and it was on her property, and so my parents went with her to make sure that she could keep her creamery. I mean, different things like that. And so then later on in life, when I started having children, we didn't know nothing about birth control. And so she was trying to introduce me to birth control. What in the world are you talking about? But then then I had a child, and so I was trying to get nun support. She took me to Elkington because the father lived in Maryland, and they said, we don't do bastard kids. So those are the kind of things, I mean, that was constantly in my face in my life. So as I continued to grow up, black history started becoming prominent, and 90% of the time I wore African clothes. So they told me when I was looking for a job, they said, Edna said, you can't get no job looking like that. And so I had to change my clothes, what I was wearing, to an interview and stuff like that. I mean, those are the kind of things that happened. When I was trying to get nun support, she took me to Elkington, and then she really argued with them about my child wasn't a bastard, you know, and that he was a human being. I didn't get no nun support there because they wasn't going to give it to me, you know. Just little things like that. She let me know who was the Klan in Middletown, because hey, she was white. She hung out with them. So she said, watch this person and watch that person, and be careful, isn't it? You know. So I always living on the edge 90% of the time as my adulthood started coming. Yeah.
How were holidays, birthdays, Christmas celebrated in your family? Did you have family special traditions?
Yep. We always had, those were the days. First off, I need to go back a little bit because we raised, my grandparents we had chicken, ducks, cows. No, we didn't have no cows. We bought cows. We had chicken, ducks, turkeys, any kind of animal you wanted. We raised it, and so and then in November, or somewhere thereabouts, everybody in the neighborhood would come to our house, and they would have what they call hog killing time, and so then that's when we got really good sausage, really good pork chops, you know, and then you took and had all that stuff, and so Thanksgiving, we always had Thanksgiving. We had turkey. Christmas, we had a goose because we had to get the grease from the goose for medication. Nastiest tasting stuff in the world, but that's what we had, and so we always came together. My parents, my mother and father, and my grandparents. They all came to my grandparents' house. We had those days. Those 2 days was always together, and we had good times. That, you know, we don't, everything that we had came out of our yard. The turkey, my grandfather raised the turkeys, so then they killed the turkeys. The other thing that was crazy was we had chickens, and you had to take the chicken and wring his neck. What a Lord of mercy! Grab that chicken. They said, didn't it bite you? I said, no. I said, but I had to do it because that's what they said I had to do. So I had to take that chicken neck and wring it, and then I wouldn't eat chicken. I wouldn't eat it. And then when I started having kids, they found out that the pig came out of the yard, or that the cow came from somebody's farm, and so when I had the meat put in the freezer. And when I would bring it home, I had to take it out of the paper so that they wouldn't know where to meat, because they wasn't going to eat it. And so it was little things like that, you know. But we raised everything. We grew everything. The garden was everything. We would go on a railroad track and get blackberries and make.
You had your own little farm.
Yes.
What do you know about your family's surname?
Nothing. A couple of times I tried to do whatever that thing
Ancestry.
is. Yep, and my grandfather was born in a little town called Hollywood, Maryland, and so I got some information from the senior center that said he wasn't born there. And so then I tried to look him up, found some family members, but nothing worked out. So I know nothing about that, and I keep saying I'm going to do it, but now my attention span is short, so I don't know nothing about it.
How is the world today different from when it was like when you were a child? Is it different today?
Is it different? Is it different? Yes, it's different. Yes. How is it different? Well, for me, it's like I was able to get an education, so I was able to go into different areas of different cultures, and talk to people, and I did alcohol and drug counseling, so I was able to do that with different races and stuff like that, and have conversations with them. So while we was talking about the addictions or whatever the issues were that they were dealing with, I was also learning about different people and how they lived and stuff like that. So how is it different? Now they're trying to wipe all that out. You know, they don't want the books in the schools, you know, and stuff like that. I used to, with my kids, I would come to Silver Lake, because they all went to Silver Lake as elementary school, and I would go around and read to kids and stuff like that. You're not allowed to go into schools no more, you know. Well, I can understand that too, because as a social worker, you know, sometimes kids weren't allowed to be with parents, and so you have to watch who can come into school and stuff like that. When my kids was coming up, I had a freedom of going to the schools and stuff like that, and I enjoyed going in there and talking to the kids and stuff like that. I spent some time in the school as a, I guess you call it, a person that dealt with the kids that had problems, and I started a little club with them, and so then the kids got to the place where they wanted to come to me because we would do things. I knew nothing about academics, so what I did was something to keep them quiet, and so they would do chess and stuff like that, and I knew nothing about chess either, but they knew a little bit about it, so they would come in there and they would do chess and stuff like that, and start a little chess club for themselves, you know. But teachers didn't like that because they were supposed to be coming in there, they're supposed to be punished, you know. I was supposed to be punishing them, and so I don't know how they do it now, but that's how that's what I enjoyed. That's what I enjoyed about the academics. How the world is different now. You can't go into schools. You can't talk to people like you used to. You can't. Better not have a conversation about race and stuff like that. You know. But if the kids would ask me, you know, we would. Janet Baldwin would have all different kind of cultures, whatever the cultures were in our classroom. She would have them there, and she would have someone from those cultures come in and talk to them about how they lived and stuff like that. And it's something similar to what I'm doing now, except I could remember a little better then. Yeah.
Is there a naming tradition in your family, such as always giving the firstborn son the name of his paternal grandfather?
My brother is named after my grandfather, William Alfred Dickerson. Reverend Bill is coming.
Yeah.
That's part of my family's name. That's my grandfather. Reverend Bill is the third. My brother's Junior is the second. I named my son after his dad, but my daughter said she wasn't going to do that to her kids. Yeah, so my grandson's now playing basketball in Belgium. I mean, Barcelona. Wait a minute, let me get it right. Because he's going to be playing, I'm concerned right now for the world as it is now, because he's going to be playing basketball in Dubai. And it's just scary. My son played basketball, got a college, got a degree to play basketball, and he does well. My son has retired 3 or 4 times, you know, from the state, from the county, and now he's with somebody. He's working somewhere. Yep.
Considering that we're about to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country this year, what stories have come down to you about your parents, grandparents, or more distant ancestors? Nothing.
Nothing. Mm-mm.
Are there any stories about famous or infamous relatives in your family?
No.
Not giving away too much, but
No, I don't have no famous. We don't have no famous people in our family. No.
Are there any special heirlooms, photos, Bibles, or other memorabilia that have been passed down in your family?
Yes, we have the family Bible. In it, my mother kept everybody's birth date, the time they were born, and all that kind of stuff. So I have that. I gave that to my sister. I said, because should I pass, I don't know where it would go. Because I had some other stuff from my grandparents, and we didn't value things back in the day like that. And so my grandfather's picture that I had, some things like that I don't have, but I have a picture of my mother when she was younger, and my grandmother. Well, I say my grandmother, and somebody probably come here and said that wasn't your grandmother, and she wasn't. she was my my, her name was Edna, and I was named after her, but she was my grandfather's second wife, you know, but she was grandma, you know, and so I got pictures of them and stuff like that. I kept stuff like that, but we didn't value stuff like that because I used to have a little potbelly coal stove that I wish now I had kept, you know, but I think back at it, you know, it was like when we had these 4 bedrooms upstairs, and it was on 2 on each side, and so one side had the potbelly stove, and the other side had the kerosene stove, and so that's how we heated the upstairs. Or back in the day, you know, you had to. My mother didn't believe in gas stoves. She did not want no gas stove, did not want no kerosene stove, you know. So everything was coal and wood and stuff like that. So we had all those kind of things like that. Well, I know we wasn't going to keep them, but that's how we heated the downstairs, and that's basically it.
What was the full name of your spouse, and can you tell us about him?
Okay, his name was George Albert. He worked in he worked at Deemer Steel in Newcastle.
Deemers?
Deemer Steel in Newcastle, and his family worked at Cooch's Bridge, Cooch's. So that if anything was famous in my family, it was because of my husband and his mother working at Cooch's Bridge, you know, because Cooch's was a famous people back in Glasgow, and
He worked at their house?
no, his mother did. His mother did. No, he worked. My husband worked at Deemer Steel. That's basically it. They party. Well, I mean, something about talking about partying. Now, back in the day, that was what they did. Party. Weekend, get off work and you had this beer, you had that. My husband would go down in Maryland and get fish and stuff like that and bring them home and process them and put them in the freezer and stuff like that. But nothing famous.
When and how did you two meet?
Partying. Place called the Cotton Club. The Cotton Club in Middletown. When I got old enough to go in there, because the Drapers didn't allow us to come in there. They first off, their kids were teachers, so their kids knew everybody. So you didn't get into the Cotton Club unless you was old enough to go in there and drink, you know. So when I got old enough to go in there, I was in the Cotton Club, and that's how we met, partying. Yep.
And when you got married, did you have, where did you get married at, and did you have a celebration?
No. Money didn't allow that. But we got married in Elkton. I got married at Elkton, and came home and did nothing. I've been trying to remember. I don't even remember us doing anything. Because I had my license almost a year before we got married, you know. But we got married and came on home. And had to get married because before my license expired.
Okay. How did your what did your family enjoy doing together? Like your family, your husband and kids?
My husband loved to play games, like pinochle and stuff like that. So he would do that kind of stuff like that. As did my grandparents. They checkers and pinochle, and on Saturdays we would get together. A group of us, husband and wives, would get together and play a game, board game, pennies and stuff like that. So those are the kind of things that we would do almost every weekend, like that. Yeah, or they were the friends. My husband comes from a family called the Cales. Cales is a big family in Middletown, and so they all would get together. They would either have turtle. I swore I would never eat a turtle, but I did because they cooked that turtle and it tasted so good I thought I was eating chicken. I really did, and then my hands got sticky. I said, "Well, what is it? What is this?" I said the bus, or Christmas time, the women would get together and make donuts and stuff like that, make homemade root beer and stuff. Those are the traditions that we had. Up until about 2 years ago, I used to make all the donuts in my family because nobody else wanted to do it, and that's work. It is work. But those are the kind of things that we would do for fun. You know, we'd go from house to house, and we call them. Didn't call them block party. We didn't call it block party. We called it something else. Can't remember now. But anyhow, that's what we would do. You know.
What was your profession and how did you choose it? You kind of talked a little bit about it earlier.
Okay. I became, in the beginning I did housework. That's how I lost this finger. Because I didn't have to work. My husband worked and provided for us. But if I wanted to go on vacation or something like that, I had to earn my money. So I belonged to an organization called the Eastern Stars, and we would do bus trips and things like that, going different places. So if I wanted to go, I had to earn my money to go, and just work anywhere I could get some job, make some money, and that's how we did it. And my husband didn't like travel. He did not like travel, but I had 2 kids in the service, and one of them was in Louisiana, and we would go down there. And first time we went down there, he said he wasn't flying, so we got on a bus. Texarkana, Texas. I remember that for the rest of my life. Texarkana, Kansas, Texas, or whatever it is called. It seemed like I went to sleep in Texas and I woke up in Texas. And so then when we got down there, he was in I don't know where he was at that time, my son. We got down there, I done bought round trip tickets. Then he thought about, we can catch a plane home. I said, are you going to spend it? Because he don't spend money either. I said, are you going to spend the money? I said, because he said, no. I said, well, we're going to go back on this bus. And we rode that bus from, that was the longest ride. I told my kids I would never do that one again. But those are the kind of things that we would do. We would try to keep up as much as we could with our kids, wherever they were, you know, do whatever they were doing, just to keep up with them and keep them involved in our lives and we stay in their life. Because, like, I have 3 boys and two girls. Wendell, Gerald, George. Those are my 3 boys. I call them son number 1, 2, and 3, and son number. And I also tell people, I said my kids run the gamut from criminal to it was army. They was army. To police officer. And my son number 3 is a police officer, and we would keep up with wherever they were, whatever they were doing. Try to keep up with it. Basketball, football, baseball, whatever they were doing.
What were your daughters' names?
Mona and Michelle. Michelle's out here with me now, and Mona Lisa's my daughter. Yeah.
What accomplishments were you the most proud of?
Being able to get my degree. That was the number one thing, because I was the first person in my family to get a high school diploma. Although I'm the firstborn, but nobody else went to high school, and so I got that. That created some kind of conflict sometimes, but because sometimes people said, "Oh, you think you're cute, or you think you're this, or you think you're that," you know. But I was determined to do something other than housework, because that's what I had been doing, just a lot of domestic work. And then I had a business with counseling where I would have clients, and I worked for a guy in Dover. And the thing I'm most grateful for is that I worked for an organization called, well, the guy's name was Leon Sullivan, and I was able to travel all over the United States with that guy. I was able to travel all over everywhere, just to spread the word for education, to help people get jobs and stuff like that. And so we started a program in Middletown called OIC, Opportunities of America, and I would bring people into that program from Middletown, and they would several people got jobs and lived a decent life. They got jobs at places like Blue Cross over Delaware City, Getty Oil, and places like that, and had a decent life, and that program lasted for about 4 years, and then after a while, funds got tight, but it was good. It was good. That's the thing I'm most grateful for, because it also allowed people to know who I was, and so like when you came and asked me about different people, like I said, I was always meddling in people's business, because if as a social worker for Child Protective Services, I would have these kids, and these parents would come in and tell me these fabulous, non-truthful stories about how this happened to the child and stuff like that. But I had to let them know, I was able to say no to a lot of people, and yes to some people, and so that's what makes I'm most famous for, the ability to do that.
How has the recent development affected the area here in Middletown?
Put so much traffic in the community. That's what I say all the time. I say that all the time because people come here. I've been here all my life, and people come here and they complain. I said, did you think when you came here that you was going to be the only person that was going to come to Middletown? I said, because no, we had to have more than you. I said, they said, well, they had no business putting the first steward that came out there, the name was first. Well, anyhow, had no business putting that store in here because it had too many, brought too much traffic. I said, but I was glad when I was able to go to that store and get cotton, and it would be a good grade of thread, and make clothes. 'Cause I used to do a lot of sewing too. Make clothes for people, I said I was glad when I was able to do that and not have to go all the way up to Wilmington, But those are the kind. As I talk to you more, I remember other stuff because I used to also made slip covers and stuff like that for people, and chair covers and stuff like that. But you needed a good quality thread. You couldn't just go up Joseph Berkman's or places like that and get really. It kept breaking. It kept breaking. So I was glad, and Walmart. Well, when Walmart first came here, was it Walmart? Rod's here. Okay.
So we'll just finish up then because you have to get your ride. What do you want people to remember most about yourself, your family, their business?
That I love people. I really love people. I would always love to be with people. I tell them I'm coming. And I will always be around people. They honored me in the NAACP 2 years ago as a person that kids would want. They wanted kids to emulate, And and I want them to remember that the same way that I did it, they did it too. So, okay.
All right, well, we appreciate your doing this for us. You had a lot of very interesting things to say about the history of Middletown,
Yeah.
and I just want to thank you for that time.
Okay.